Hi everybody, Anthony here again. First of all, a shout out to everyone who subscribed recently. You pushed me over the 1,000 subscriber mark, and about a day and a half after applying, I got my channel monetized. It's taken about 3 years, but I do enjoy it, even though sometimes I get blowback from trolls. Anyway, if you're watching this, you know about the drama at the Aftermath Foundation, or at least you've probably been aware of the surface level drama. Aaron Smith-Levin did come out with a follow-up video that I encourage everyone to watch, because he does bring up some issues that he hasn't before, that shine some light on some of the behind-the-scenes issues. I may do a deeper dive on that video at some point, but I don't want to go into all the issues that he brought up. But in the video, which was often hard to watch because he was quite emotional and understandably so, he admitted that his marriage had broken down a number of years ago and indicated since then he's engaged in some type of behavior that he's not discussed, including an incident in Los Angeles 6 months ago, which he said he would talk about, but not for another 3 months, which I don't know why one might need to wait 9 months before discussing something. If you can discuss it in 3 months, why can't you discuss it now? Anyway, we know from the Paulette Cooper case that Scientology will go to any extent to try to blackmail or destroy people, including trying to arrange romantic long-term partners with their intended targets. Was OSA successful in some type of sting operation with Aaron Smith-Levin? Perhaps time will tell. But it's clear that there were incidents that happened and a lot of information that the public does not know about, yet people are jumping to all kinds of conclusions about malfeasance on the part of the Rinders and Headleys as board members. If you were Aaron and you say to Mark and Claire, you say that you have all the receipts and documents, if you do, then show them, and then the Aftermath Foundation releases documents, you can't complain that they're trying to embarrass you by releasing documents that you called for. So I think at this point, people on all sides, if you've made a decision, you should really look at the situation with an open mind and pretend that you don't know anything about the people or issues involved, and process what's been discussed. Who really is acting in a calm and professional manner? I'm not going to answer that because you can make up your own decision, and if you disagree with me, nothing that I can say is going to convince you otherwise. But I want to lay out a few things before I talk about the responsibilities of being on a nonprofit board of directors, because that's really what the issues are. It's not about whether Aaron may be having sex with women other than his wife or having issues in bars where the police are called, but how that may be impacting the work of the board of directors. Generally, small boards like these are composed of volunteer directors. They don't get paid for their work. In fact, it can often cost them money and certainly a lot of time and stress. And certainly when you have a group of friends that are on a board, tough decisions can be made even tougher because of friendship ties. One of the issues that I brought up and is almost universally condemned by my viewers is having so many married couples on the board. Now, depending on the scope of the work of a board of directors, often you might have between 5 and 11 members on a board. This is usually best practices for smaller boards, and generally you want to have an odd number of people so that you don't have any evenly split votes. But often the minimum number of directors is 3, and that's often a state requirement. So what about the issue of having one or more couples on a board of directors? This could be very tricky because it could look like people are ganging up on another board member. But let us say that the Aftermath Foundation had a rule prohibiting married couples or people otherwise engaged in domestic partnerships from simultaneously being board members. So let's get rid of the males on the board who are in domestic relations, leaving Amy, Claire, Christy, Ray Jeffrey, who was a lawyer, and Aaron Smith-Levin. And we'll assume that this is after Louise left the Aftermath Foundation. So you're still going to have 4 people out of 5 members voting Aaron off, rather than 7 people out of 8 board members voting against him. So it doesn't really matter if people are couples or not. But I would say that with best practices, and for the sake of appearances, it would be better if their bylaws were amended to prohibit married couples from serving simultaneously. But there again, that might be problematic because that would be discriminating against people based on marital status. Perhaps they should not have a prohibition in their bylaws, but have a statement of best practices encouraging interested couples to only having one member on the board of directors at any one time, while the other partner in the relationship can certainly volunteer for the organization or even sit in on board meetings but not vote. That would be an easy workaround, and again, nothing would change practically, but it would give a better look to the organization. So what about boards of directors of nonprofits? Some of what Aaron has brought up indicates that he sees himself as one of the two co-founders of the Aftermath Foundation, and up until the end of his recent video, he discussed his desire of not leaving that organization no matter what. But he's realized that it's time to move on and start a new one. I think that we all have to remember, whether we've started nonprofits ourselves or perhaps you're just an observer and have no connection to nonprofits, but the purpose of the nonprofit is the goals of the organization. It's not about one person, even if they are a founder of the organization. And that's not just a philosophical concept, but that's a legal concept. So for those of you who are still interested in the subject and still watching, because I think it's a worthwhile, although kind of dry subject, I'm going to talk about what are considered to be ethical and then legal responsibilities of nonprofit boards of directors. And these were derived from Bard AI, but I could have come up with all of them just because I've done so much work on boards. And you can find this information on every web page that talks about board responsibilities. So here we go. Here are some ethical responsibilities of being on a nonprofit board of directors. Act in the best interests of the organization and its mission. Avoid conflicts of interest. This means that board members must not let their personal interests or the interests of their businesses or other affiliations interfere with their duties to the nonprofit organization. Maintain confidentiality. This means that board members must not share confidential information about the organization or its donors with anyone who is not authorized to have it. And as a side note, this is referring to confidential information. They can reveal public information such as donors and the amounts that they donate. In some states that might be public information, including information as to who the employer is and what the address is of donors. Also, confidential information that the interested party has given permission to release can be released. So if Aaron Smith-Levin challenges the Aftermath Foundation to show the receipts, then that can give them permission to show things which may be embarrassing to Aaron. Okay, I'll continue. Be truthful and transparent. This means that board members must be honest and open with each other, with the organization staff and volunteers, and with the public. Use resources responsibly. This means that board members must make sure that the organization's resources are used in a way that is consistent with its mission and does not waste money. Respect diversity and inclusion. This means that board members must be aware of and respect the different perspectives and experiences of all people, and that they must make sure that the organization is welcoming and inclusive to all. Comply with all applicable laws and regulations. This means that board members must make sure that the organization is in compliance with all federal, state, and local laws and regulations. Hold themselves and others accountable. This means that board members must be held accountable for their actions and decisions, and that they may hold others accountable for their actions and decisions as well. Again, ongoing behavior which might be legal if it is disruptive to the board or to the board's officers' times or casts the organization in a bad light could be grounds for removing a board member. In addition to these general ethical responsibilities, board members also have specific ethical responsibilities related to their fiduciary duties. These duties include the duty of care. This means that board members must take care of the organization and its assets by making prudent decisions and by using sound business judgment. The duty of loyalty. This means that board members must always act in the best interests of the organization and must never put their own interest ahead of the interest of the organization. This is one where somebody who is a mass communicator, whether they write editorials for newspapers or they're an elected politician, or in the case of all of these people, They have YouTube channels. It's not necessarily the financial concerns of people making money from YouTube, but rather when a content creator is attacking people in the ex-Scientology or anti-Scientology world, such as attacking certain lawyers or Chris Shelton or Tony Ortega, which might tend to look like it is violating this type of policy. And it doesn't matter if the criticisms are true, but if those criticisms attacking certain people are not in the best interest of the organization, then you can have a problem. The duty of obedience. This means the board members must make sure that the organization obeys all applicable laws and regulations and that it follows its own bylaws. And here there's been statements which Aaron has made about policies that he was accused of potentially breaking. He's retracted some of the statements that he's made, and if you listen carefully, there's other instances where he admitted that he had been sent something to vote on, but just did not vote on it. That doesn't mean that he was cut out of the vote, he just did not reply. And he's admitted that he's been given drafts of documents and asked for feedback. And also, there were policies that he admitted that Luis had originally included as policies of the board. And while Aaron didn't think that anyone voted on them, just that they were somehow included in founding documents. But that's not really how organizations work. If you haven't voted on it, that is, if the board, holding at least a quorum, is not voted by a majority to adopt something, then it's not adopted. But if people are just not paying attention, something may have been adopted that they weren't aware of, but which they were still bound by. Again, what the rules of the board were isn't as important as just understanding that boards do have rules that people have to follow that constrain them more than just general outside laws. So those are some of the ethical responsibilities created by an AI program. Here's a slightly different prompt that brings up some other things, some of it touching upon the financial, fiduciary and legal responsibilities. The responsibilities of being a nonprofit board of directors can vary depending on the organization, but they typically include some or all of the following. Setting the organization's mission and vision. The board is responsible for defining the organization's purpose and goals, and for ensuring that all of the organization's activities are aligned with its mission. Strategic planning. The board is responsible for developing the organization's strategic plan, which outlines the organization's long-term goals and objectives. The board also reviews and updates the strategic plan on a regular basis. Financial oversight. The board is responsible for ensuring that the organization is financially sound. This includes approving the organization's budget, monitoring the organization's financial performance, and making sure that the organization is in compliance with all applicable laws and regulations. Fundraising. The board is responsible for helping the organization raise the money it needs to achieve its mission. This may involve identifying potential donors, soliciting donations, and cultivating relationships with donors. Governance. The board is responsible for ensuring that the organization is governed in a fair and transparent manner. This includes developing and implementing policies and procedures and ensuring that the organization is in compliance with all applicable laws and regulations. Hiring and evaluating the executive director. The board is responsible for hiring the organization's executive director, who is responsible for the day-to-day operations of the organization. The board also evaluates the executive director's performance on a regular basis. Advocacy. The board may also be responsible for advocating for the organization's mission. This may involve lobbying elected officials, educating the public about the organization's work, and building relationships with other organizations that share the organization's goals. So this video's got longer than I had intended, but I think that it's important if you're really concerned about this controversy and about who, if anybody, is right and who is wrong, then it's important to really understand what responsibilities members of a nonprofit board have. And I wouldn't even suggest it's not really important who's right and wrong at this point. It seems that Aaron understands and agrees at this point that it was time for him to leave the Aftermath Foundation, and he still encourages people to contribute to that organization because he believes in the mission, but he's also stated that he's going to start a new foundation with an expanded mission, and I think that that's great. I wish him well. I hope that he can create a great board of directors with great policies to run his new foundation. And from all the support of Aaron that people have communicated to me, I have no doubt his organization should become well funded by people who support his mission. And even if you have two organizations of ex-Scientologists who are helping people leave the organization, they're not in competition with each other. It's not a zero-sum game. In fact, the more organizations and people you have fighting for any cause, the more successful all of them should be. And one more thing before I wrap up here. As I've mentioned in other videos, I have a lot of experience being in leadership positions on boards of directors of nonprofits, as well as a lot of experience being on local and county governmental boards. If you don't think that what I have to say has any validity, then that's fine. You don't have to accept it or even watch my videos. Although if you've gotten this far, I appreciate it. But I wanted to say, from my experience of working on boards, you sometimes have very well-meaning people whose behavior becomes a distraction. Whether it's their behavior on the board, in board meetings, or outside in their private lives. Sure, people are entitled to have private lives, but when their behavior in public settings outside of the organization that they're a board member of becomes disruptive or problematic, then the organization can suffer. I have friends who might be described as this type of person and who might not be good serving on a board, but they're still good friends and great people. So you can love Aaron and think that his fight is the good fight, but also realize it may have been time for him to leave the Aftermath Foundation, no matter how things ended up right at the end as far as voting or anything like that. Sometimes things get messy, but people can move on with their lives and continue their success. I'm still going to have people who disagree with me, but I would love to hear from you, even if you disagree with me. Let's have a civil conversation about this. I do want to hear from you. And has anything that I've said in the past 20 minutes or so caused you to change your mind about anything? Do you now see more nuance in what goes on behind the scenes in a nonprofit board? Leave your comments in the comments section. Hit the like button if you enjoyed this video, even if you disagree with me. And hopefully by now you've hit the subscribe button. If not, please hit it. I really appreciate it. And please do check out my other videos and comment on those. Thank you so much, and we'll talk later.